was definitely a godsend. My nanny, on the other hand, unfortunately got diagnosed with cancer when I was 9 years old, and actually came home to me and actually gave me the first moment of when I started trying to take care of other people in my life. Which is when she sat me down and she basically said, "Hey, I need your help around the house," with massive tears in her eyes. I'd literally have toys in my hands. I got one in my left and one in my right, and I'm playing like, Transformers and G.I. Joe and all this kind of stuff. And my mental acuity at 9 years old wasn't super like.
Welcome to the Gentleman Success, Happiness, and Fulfillment Talk podcast, where we bring to you the most successful, happy, fulfilled gentlemen from around the world who have been able to conquer themselves, their life, their marriage, and their businesses. You will be learning from four-dimensional gentlemen who have cracked the code to the science of having it all. The question is, how can married entrepreneurs with kids become gentlemen, achieve true freedom, and build a successful, happy, and fulfilled life, marriage, and business? This show will give you the answer for that. My name is Alex Ramirez, and I'm your host, and you're welcome to the Gentleman Success, Happiness, Fulfillment Talk podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Gentleman's SHF Talk with Alex Ramirez. And today I have a very special guest. I'm very excited to jam with him a little bit more. We have already been talking for a little bit before we started the show. But before I introduce him to you, I just want to give a big shout out to all of you guys who have been leaving comments, reviews, likes on all the major podcasting platforms. And to those of you who have been watching and listening on YouTube, thank you very much. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast on the YouTube channel, please do so. And I want to ask you to leave a comment, leave a review, leave us a like. Most people don't do it, but the 1% of you who do, the few of you who do, are the ones who make all the difference. And you are the reason we do this. And this is how we grow. So thank you very much. And I want to introduce Stephen Scoggins. Stephen Scoggins or Stephen Scoggins?
It's Stephen, but it's all good, man.
All right. And he went from homeless to heartfelt industry leader. Stephen Scoggins is an 8-figure serial entrepreneur of multiple businesses who has dedicated himself to serving the person he used to be through his proprietary curriculum of Transform You Life Mastery System. He guides others towards the ultimate potential in order to elevate their possibilities. And Stephen is also an author of and the host of the syndicated, top-rated hit podcast Stuck to Unstoppable, where he speaks to world-class thought leaders on what it takes to break free and create unstoppable possibilities. So, Stephen, welcome, man. Thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate you being here, and I'm excited. I'm excited to get into this.
Yeah, man. No, I'm super stoked. It's funny. We can jam on a lot of different things. We have a lot of similarities as we're kind of getting to know each other a little bit before we hopped on officially on air, right? So. No, I'm super stoked about it. Hopefully I can give you guys something of value today that you can, take and actually make it practical, like right now in today's time frame. That's what I'm all about. I've obviously been through a pretty difficult journey of my own, and I find that actually teaches the most. So super excited to be here.
Awesome, man. So one of the first things that I do is to tell my guests to introduce themselves. Not introduce themselves, but tell us about your entrepreneurial journey in 75 seconds or less.
75 seconds. Oh, wow. All right. So where's the time clock? We're getting started. Click. All right. Entrepreneurial journey grew up in an alcoholic environment, raised by a grandmother, to learning the construction trade after she passed away, then being able to start my own business at the age of 18, after dropping out of high school to help my family pay the bills. And from there, went over to basically screwing that first opportunity up, blowing it out of the water, making a bunch of money, spending it all, becoming a dork with money, and losing everything, later ending me up and being homeless, and then starting my next business that became an 8-figure business from the trash piles of a construction site, thanks to a second chance from a mentor that I didn't deserve. That is the fastest I've ever done that.
Cool. Yeah, I know. Cool, man. So let's see. So man, how come? So you said you were raised by your grandmother, right?
Yeah.
So why was that? How come that happened?
Well, I mean, I think I think there's a lot more people that struggle with being parented well early on than we'd realize. I think the vast majority of the social issues we run into nowadays is actually directly correlated to improper or poor parenting. But it also goes back to the fact that parents can only parent how they've been parented. And you and I were talking about that a little bit, right? So it took a while to kind of figure that out. But my parents, specifically my mother, was unfortunately abused when she was growing up. So she struggled with a lot of mental illness and things of that nature that kind of, held her back. My father was, unfortunately an alcoholic, which he learned from his father. And I'm a big believer that my grandfather, that was the first alcoholic, unfortunately, learned to be an alcoholic after surviving Pearl Harbor and actually having PTSD before they knew what PTSD was. Right. But when you're a son and you want to connect with your father and your father's nearby, what you do is you end up doing what the father does in order to stay connected to the father. Right. So that's kind of how the transition kind of happened. And then unfortunately, they had a divorce when I was super young, maybe 5, 6 years old. And that led me to living with my grandmother, my mom's mom, who I called Nanny. And then, she raised me from 6 to probably 11 years old when she passed away. And, from then I was back with dad. So, I mean, I think it just comes down to, it's the life experience. Cause when you're young, you don't actually realize that you don't have a lot. You don't realize that you're kind of stuck. You just, from your perspective, you're either getting love and affirmation or you're not. Right.
Yeah.
And from my parents, they had so big of a struggle on their own lives that I think it was impossible for them to give me what they didn't already possess for themselves. Whereas my grandmother had already have her, for lack of a better word, her come to Jesus moments in life and was already well on her healing journey. So therefore she was able to love well. So I kind of think that's at the heart of it.
Yeah. So to a certain degree, it was a good thing that your parents, divorced, they separated, and then that you were left with your grandmother. But you mentioned that she passed away when you were 11.
Yeah. So she passed away when I was 11. Unfortunately, when we went to go live with her, yes, it turned out to be an amazing blessing because I was able to avoid illustrating or becoming or somehow applying a lot of the bad behaviors that from the choices my parents were making. So that was definitely a godsend. My nanny, on the other hand, unfortunately got diagnosed with cancer when I was 9 years old and actually came home to me and actually gave me the first moment of when I started trying to take care of other people in my life, which is when she sat me down and she basically said, "Hey, I need your help around the house," with massive tears in her eyes. I'd literally have toys in my hands. I got one in my left and one in my right, and I'm playing like, Transformers and G.I. Joe and all this kind of stuff. I mean, my mental acuity at 9 years old wasn't super like cognitively developed, right? But I could just tell from an emotional perspective that she was struggling with something that was impeding her. I'm sure she felt like she was alone and isolated because she didn't really have anybody else to rely on other than herself, and therefore she taught me how to go in and basically make meals with anything that could boil water. So she pulled the chair over to the stove and we started boiling water. And then I made oatmeal and hot dogs and, macaroni and cheese, ramen noodles, like anything you could boil with water. She taught me how to do. And, for the next 2 years, off and on, I was my nanny's crutch going to and from the back bedroom over to the bathroom. Like she would just put her hand on my shoulder and I was literally like a crutch. To obviously making meals, getting my little brother up, who was 3 years younger than me, getting us ready for school, walking the, close to a mile up to the bus stop, or not the bus stop, but the actual school. We were within walking distance of the school we were to have. And, that's where life kind of started for me. And unfortunately I look back now at a way I couldn't understand for a long, long time and see the blessing that my life has illustrated. And I think that's one of the things that hopefully your listeners and your viewers can understand is no matter what you face, it's one of the reasons we created Stuck to Unstoppable is because no matter what you face, no matter what's standing in your way, no matter what you think is impeding your progress, it's actually the very thing that is teaching you the wisdom and the lessons, if you will, to create what your process will be. One of my signature quotes that I've had for a number of years now is the greatest purpose in life you'll ever have is serving the person you used to be. Right. But in order to serve the person you used to be, you have to become more than you are now. Right. Otherwise, you can't go back and serve the person you used to be. We were talking off air for a brief moment and you were sharing part of your story. And I'm like, you're legitimately serving the person you used to be. Like the whole purpose of your podcast is that your personal transformation is now an indicator and an inspiration for other people's transformation. And I believe that's what life's all about. I believe that if we can go back and help the person we used to be earlier, then we can actually collectively reduce the world's suffering quicker.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So yeah, 100%. Like I'm serving the person I used to be. I'm serving the person my father used to be, and like he would have wanted help to become, right? I'm helping like people become the person that my father would have liked to become, right? With help. So yeah, I'm doing that. And like the way I did that was like through a lot of growth, right? A lot of work on myself and growth. And like really realizing that, oh, like this is what I'm supposed to do for some reason. Like this is exactly why I started my podcast, to interview like the definition of what I call a modern gentleman, so that we can together motivate, inspire, and bless other entrepreneurs that are at an earlier stage of their journey with the tool sets, the mindset, the skill sets, and everything necessary for them to collapse the time that it will take them to become what I call a modern gentleman and achieve that true freedom that they're after. So yeah, man. And like, okay, so you were raised by your grandmother. She taught you how to basically take care of yourself and take care of your little brother. And then like you would even take him to school and stuff. And then what happened?
I mean, it's unfortunately she passed away. I mean, she was diagnosed with cancer. That's where the conversation came from. And unfortunately, this is the early to mid 80s. And in the early to mid 80s, the chemo treatments were more damaging in today's standards than the actual cancer itself. So within about 2 years, unfortunately, she lost her battle to cancer. And then about that time, my parents had no choice to kind of come back into our lives. And then I went to go live with my father, and my little brother went to go live with my mother down in Florida. That's where they moved to. We stayed here in North Carolina. And, as a result, I was fast forwarded into the construction industry, which is where I spent a lot of my time. If I wasn't at school or, doing something productive, right, I was actually on a job site somewhere, a Saturday, a Sunday, a holiday, getting up at 5 a.m., going, and by the time I was 16, I could read blueprints and even run crews. A lot of that is just, I was thrust into adulthood very, very early. So I've always had a healthy respect for the power of inspiration, not manipulation. Now, inspiration comes from the power of influence, which is acting out of selfless behavior. In other words, you're trying to help someone for their benefit, not your own. Manipulation is taking advantage and or helping someone for your own selfish benefit on a regular basis. You see what I'm saying? So I was able to see at a very early age that if I could learn to influence people in a respectful way by bringing value to them on a consistent basis, that I would be able to scale and escalate in my own life quicker, just because I was offering more value than other people around them. And I used that technique for a number of years to both have highs and lows. I mentioned to you off air that, actually that's in the less than 70 seconds, I think it was, intro or whatever, that, I had, become homeless after actually shooting myself in the foot, and totally screwing up a major opportunity that I had. So I learned things along the way that both created in me a healthy version of creating influence, and also battled with walking through the manipulational side, which is, I think a lot of people do that, right? We talking off air earlier, and you're talking about different people in your life that did a lot of taking, right? They took from other people. They weren't super accountable to those people, right? That is manipulation all day long. You're only going after that relationship with that person or whatever because if it's a business gain or a relationship gain or et cetera. And I feel like at the end of the day, that's probably where most of us get stuck at. So what I want to do is I want to help people position themselves to learn from my mistakes, not have to gain it all and lose it all and have to start all over again a second time or a third time. Rather than that, let's set them up for success ahead of time. And let's just say, look, part of what I think makes a modern gentleman, so to speak, is this word called character.
Yeah. And
character is a choice. You're choosing, am I giving or am I taking? You're choosing, am I learning or am I staying still? You're choosing what kind of relationships you surround yourself with versus ones that you replace, right? You're choosing what you're learning and what you're studying on a regular basis. Most people, especially at your age, are not focused on personal development at all. They're focused on video games. They're focused on cars. They're focused on Instagram. They're focused on going out and partying. They're focused on a lot of things that ultimately are not going to breed freedom. If anything, it breeds bondage because it makes your significance and your meaning tied to something that's outside of yourself. One of the things that I love so much about the work that you're doing, Alex, is you are taking the time to get the personal development right, which means you're already working from the inside out, which is why 10 years from now, people are going to be blown away by what you've been able to accomplish. And they're going to say, Alex, how did you do it? How did you do it? And you're like, well, I took myself seriously. I began to work from the inside out. and I did so at an earlier age. Therefore, I get to advance quicker, right? If your age group, right, the 21 to 30-year-old, we'll just call it 20 to 30, just for easy math. If the 20 to 30-year-old could take themselves seriously and downplay all the partying and all the shenanigans and put that same intensity into developing themselves, by the time that they're in their late 20s or early 30s, they would be able to do things that nobody else can do. By the time that I was 30 years old, I could travel wherever I wanted. I could do whatever I wanted. I could buy whatever I wanted at the time, right? I was becoming something more than I ever saw out of my own family generational background. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now I've gone through several humbling processes along the way, but ultimately one of the things I think that holds people back is, especially when they're young, you're like, I want to experience the fullness of life. I just want to experience it all. It's going to be amazing. Da, 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 da. And then they go through the experience phase. They don't stop the experience phase. So they're in their mid to late 30s. Then they get started. Then they're like, okay, now I'm going to build a life that's going to take them a decade or more to build out. And now they're 60 and they're like, okay, I'm 60 years old. Now I'm going to retire. Now I'm going to have fun. Whereas what you're doing and what I did and what so many other people that we want to encourage them to do is we want them to work and use their youth as a tool. So by the time they get 30, they can do whatever the hell they want to do. That's called freedom.
Exactly, man. Yeah. So I'm so excited, man. So the mastermind that I'm part of, it's a $36,000 mastermind that I got in for free, right? Because of the value that I had that I exchanged with the founder of the mastermind. Yep. Right. And yeah, like I came through that opportunity because of my podcast. Like my podcast, man, has been one of the most life-changing tools that I've ever had. And I started my podcast. You know those stories, those typical stories of entrepreneurs who like start things or build things out of passion because they just want to help. And it turns out to be something that, a lot of people want, and now they can make a living out of, right? Well, this is exactly what my podcast has been for me. Like I had a goal, a 10-year goal of speaking in front of hundreds or thousands of people. Actually, my vision board is in front of me, and like I have like a stadium and stuff. In 10 years from now, that's my goal. Like that was my goal for 10 years from now. And because of my podcast and because of people, that I've been surrounding myself with and opportunities that I've been getting close to, I'm going to achieve that this year. Yeah. Right. There's a gentleman that I talked with that we really resonated 2 times actually. And he invited me to his event. I don't know why I'm saying this, but what I wanted to say, man, is that the mastermind that I'm part of, they talk about family, fitness, focus, finance, right? So they talk about building the businessman, not just the business plan. And one of the analogies that they give is that there's this driver, right? Lewis Hamilton. He's like the best F1 driver, like those cars that go like at 300 miles per hour. Yeah. And he's that kind of driver, the best in the world. What would happen if they put that driver in the car that, like any listener, like that you're probably driving right now, right? Like a Toyota Corolla. What would happen if they put that driver on a Toyota Corolla? He will still crush it, right? Because he's Lewis Hamilton. He's like still, even though if it's a Toyota Corolla, even though it's a shitty car, like he will still like do some nice stuff with it, right?
Oh, he'd be Tokyo drifting all day long.
Yeah. And the Toyota Corolla is like the business, right? Like most entrepreneurs have a Toyota Corolla business. But like if they put Lewis Hamilton on that Toyota Corolla, he will still crush it. What would happen if, and then there's this like stick figure, right? Like resembling the entrepreneur. What would happen if they put this stick figure, the average entrepreneur, on a Formula F1 car? Yeah, he would crush it, right? He would like, he wouldn't even know what to do with it. So like what most entrepreneurs, I believe, don't understand is that the business is easy, right? Like it's pretty simple. Like building the business plan, building the business is pretty simple. What most entrepreneurs have to focus on is building the businessman and making sure that you become Lewis Hamilton. Because as soon as you become Lewis Hamilton, you'll take your Toyota Corolla and turn it into a Formula F1 car, right? So yeah, like I just wanted to like give that analogy. And I was like lucky to understand that from the beginning, man. Like from the beginning, like when that big event of my life happened with my daughter that I told you about, I had this attitude of, I don't know how to do anything. Like I had some money, I don't know how to do anything. Here's some money, teach me, right? Like, and I've invested in my body, I've invested in being a husband and a father, I've invested in like running a business, I've invested in my mindset, because I had this attitude of, I don't know how to do this. Just take some money and like tell me what to do. Like I've had this attitude and it's been great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a seed that's called the sequoia seed. You ever heard of a sequoia tree?
Yeah.
So the sequoia tree is about the size of a piece of pepper. It's a very, very tiny seed. Okay. However, the sequoia tree is one of the biggest trees on the planet. When it grows into full maturity, it is one of the largest trees on the planet. The roots go for miles, or miles. I'm exaggerating a little bit. They go for what seems like forever. It has a very, very wide base. It's very, very thick. It can grow very, very tall, and it's able to surpass the trees around it in order to keep feeding itself. What you just described, especially the early adoption of personal development and self-mastery, is the definition of putting a sequoia tree seed in the ground, which is why earlier I was like, dude, you're 20 something years old. Yes, you are going to be amazing because you are doing the work now that allows the tree to grow to begin with. You know, one of the things that I've always said in building one of the reasons that my first business was a train wreck was because I tried to build a business and a future without building myself. That's my biggest mistake in business, hands down to this day. It's one of my biggest mistakes in building a business. And I learned that the business will build you as much as you build the business, as long as you're constantly investing in yourself and the business, right? The mastermind's a great thing. The regular podcasting. I mean, most opportunities are going to come your way for you and your listeners in general. Most of that opportunity is going to come through the power of relationship, right? So if most of your opportunities come through the power of relationship, if you're not in the right relationship circles, you are not going to have the right types of potential and opportunities. And I'm sure you've had to deal with this just like I did. You probably will have to step away from relationships and people that think you're changing, and you know what, you are. Like when they said you're changing, I'm like, you're doggone right I am. I'm trying to build a future. I don't want to stay in the trailer park, man. I'm done. Like the roof leak. I don't want that for my life. I want something different, right? They're also the same people that 5 years later will come back and be like, man, I knew you can do it. Will you help me do it? Right? It's that same kind of thing. But in order to get yourself going, right, you have to invest in the sequoia seed. And you invest in the sequoia seed by putting yourself in the right relationships with people. You mentioned the podcast, right? One of the best things about podcasts, right, is you get to have a relationship with people, right? We get to know each other at a more one-to-one relationship rather than us just communicating through Instagram or TikTok or whatever, right? We can actually have a conversation, and we can see where our similarities are. We can see, where maybe there's something that I've done that you aspire to do in your life. And I'm like, well, here are the 4 things that I did to get there. And you're like, done. And I see you busy with a notepad over there, like going crazy, right? That's what it's going to take to win at life. You see, most people think winning at life and business and stuff is an accident. Like some people just get lucky and they kind of stumble their way into it. And, or some people just have it all made. They have a silver spoon and da. No. Winning in life is not an accident. It takes action, practice, and consistency. With action, practice, and consistency coming from the right mental relationships that are actually seeking to help you grow, you will become the person you need to become in order to help the person you need to help.
Exactly. I like that. Action, practice, and consistency. So, man, a lot of people, they want to change, right? They want to change. And like one of the things that I would like for everyone to understand is that they have to work on themselves, and like the rest will come, right? They have to work to get their house in order, and then, the money will come, the business will get built.
Yep.
But like they have to build themselves, change the way they think, because it all comes to that, right? Yep. Like to how you think. And I really like action, practice, consistency, because a lot of people fail to change, man.
Yeah.
Like they're wanting to start getting earlier. They wanting to start hitting the gym more regularly. But then very soon after they get very motivated to go ahead and do this, they are back to, like they're back to zero with the same habits and same patterns that they're stuck with, right? That they have been stuck with for the longest time. And one of the reasons is their circle, right? The people that they surround themselves with, right? Like it doesn't matter like if you want to be warm, right? It doesn't matter how many jackets you put in. If you live in a freezer, you like the freezer will win. Your environment will win 100 times, right?
Yeah.
So like it doesn't matter how warm you are, how many jackets you wear. If you live in a freezer, you will always be cold, right? And that's your environment. So like, it doesn't matter if you
Yeah.
want to be fit and healthy and wealthy and start changing the way you think. If you live around people who are fat and like poor, have a negative mindset and are poor and are unhealthy and like they're not into personal development, and you're very close to them and that's your circle, you'll go up, like you're going to digress back to your old habits, right? To your old patterns. So that's the first thing I think is very important. Changing the people you're surrounding yourself with, changing the people you talk to, and changing your environment. And then another thing that I say is that intention. It starts with intention, right? And then with intention, you take action. And then that action you practice, right? You practice taking that action over and over again. And with consistency, that practicing of action becomes like a habit, and then it just becomes part of you. So yeah, man, like we would probably agree that the most important thing before like building a business is building yourself, right?
Yeah.
And you have this thing called life mastery framework, right? To like transform you.
Yep.
Right. And so can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So without going into too much detail, so obviously, historically, what I do is I do a live event called Transform You Live, where I'll bring in thought leaders from all over the country once a year. And essentially, we break things down and make things really bite-sized and practical. Okay. And then we have another curriculum called Transform You Acceleration, which is a lot.
Hey, sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to tell you that this podcast has completely changed my life in ways that you could never imagine, and I would like the same for you. Look, you are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with, and the fastest way for you to level yourself up in every area of your life is for you to connect with people who are where you want to be, build relationships with them, and connect with them. The best way for you to do that right now in the digital age is for you to start your own podcast. And I just wanted to let you know that I have a free training that you can get free access to. It's called the 30-day Net Worth Skyrocketing 3-step podcast cloak track framework. And it's going to show you how you can start and automate everything in your podcast, from finding your ideal guest, getting them on an interview with you, and creating an automated content machine in just 30 days. By executing on this free training, you're going to be able to connect with high-level people, no matter how rich, famous, or out of your league they may seem, in just 30 days with less than 1 to 2 hours per week, so that you can increase your net worth, your authority, your trust, your client acquisition ability, and your opportunity. So there's a special link for this free training in the description of this video. Thank you for watching and tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. Bye-bye.
Live event where I actually teach a curriculum breaking down the 4 phases of transformation. Okay. Now, whereas some of the information that you share with me on air or off air about your process of how you help people elevate their lives, I think my process kind of comes in before it. Okay. And my process is about helping you understand that your lifestyle won't change until your thinking patterns do. Your lifestyle won't change until your thinking patterns do. The limitation of your lifestyle is directly correlated to the way in which you think. All right. So I wanted to go and I wanted to figure out, okay, in my life, if I look over the last 20 plus, 25 plus years of going from homelessness to where I'm at today, owning multiple businesses, employing hundreds of amazing people, what was the process and what was it like at the top? What was it like in this most simplest practical way forward? And I came up with this acronym called GROW, right? So GROW is a specific acronym that breaks down 4 specific phases of transformation. And this is how all transformation occurs. And again, once I explain it to you, it's going to be super simplistic and you'll be able to overlay it with anybody. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Evan Carmichael, Tom Lisa Bilyeu, Ed Milet, like all these amazing human beings, these amazing entrepreneurs all followed a 4-step framework that you unpack over time based on where you are in your own journey, which is why it's so effective. All right. So let's break down the acronym for just a quick moment. I'm not going to go in super detail and in deep depth because we'd have to have like a 7-hour podcast, right?
Yeah.
But the G stands for gain perspective. Okay. We already talked a little bit about the folks that choose not to look at their lives from the outside. Most of us look at our lives and we blame and shame ourselves on the inside, right? We want to learn from the inside out, but we need to be able to look at ourselves from the outside in. We need to be able to see, what are the decisions that I'm making? Where's my emotional intelligence? What's my self-awareness like? What kinds of relationships do I have surrounding me? What types of things do I need to learn that maybe I don't learn? What types of unhealthy behaviors am I doing on a regular basis out of instinct or reaction because of some trauma or some hurdle? Like, we've got to be able to dissect how we got to where we are and clearly define what it is we want to do and where we want to go. Okay. Now, when I say that, the gaining perspective technique, all that is looking at your life from as many different angles as possible. We use a lot of internal life strategists and business strategists here within our organization. We try to, look at somebody else and connect the dots, help the person connect the dots. Once we help them connect the dots, we help them break down their cornerstone moments, which are the key life events that you've gone through that have helped shape you. Once we break that thing down, now we start looking at, okay, what are the natural gifts and strengths and talents that you possess that you could leverage to bring value to the world? And when you bring value to the world, that you can also be rewarded financially for. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, we are working from the inside out, starting with the mentality, because every action happens as a result of a choice, right? Every result happens as a result of an action, good or bad. You see what I'm saying? So the gaining perspective approach is a way of looking at yourself. It's a way of filtering every event that's happened in your life, every limiting belief, every empowering belief. It's a way to basically help you shape essentially the story of what you're going to become. We actually call one methodology a traditional lifestyle, which is where people are living by their outlook and they kind of stay stuck, to something called the transformational lifestyle, which is where people are living by their outcomes, their goals or aspirations. Okay. Now, once we've done that research, we actually have clarity, right? With clarity comes consistency. Most people are not consistent because they're unclear on what it is they're trying to be consistent on, right? Which is why the gaining perspective thing is so powerful. The second thing that we do, the R stands for remove the roadblocks, right? Now, roadblocks come in a lot of different forms. Roadblocks could be limiting beliefs. Roadblocks could be key relationships. Roadblocks could be maybe you are trying to live someone else's life, meaning someone told you need to be doing X, Y, and Z, and you're only doing X, Y, and Z because you want them to appreciate and basically validate you rather than you validating yourself from the inside out. Okay. So roadblocks come in a lot of different ways, which is one of the reasons why it's so difficult to find one framework, and why I went round and around on this for so long, is because everybody's starting point is different. Everybody's roadblocks are different. However, if we use the GROW acronym, the GROW framework within the Transform U system, we're able to see that the G is obviously gain perspective. The R is remove roadblocks. You're able to identify them. Once you identify them, now you can remove them, which means now you've gone from clarity to direction. Okay. So clarity, direction, okay, will equal possibilities. Well, how do we get to the possibility category? Well, that's where we break down number 3. Number 3 is what's known as organize a plan. Okay. Your plan, Alex, is going to be different from my plan because we have different starting points. We have different roadblocks. We're going to need different types of relationships. We're going to need different types of initiatives, different types of strategies to take us from A to Z, right? As a result, your organized plan should have a couple different things, some key attributes. I'm going to throw out a handful. First of all, you have to be able to clearly articulate where it is you want to go. Knowing that where it is you want to go will change over time based on your level of maturity and your level of influence. Okay. The second thing you've got to have is you have to have what we call a resilience plan. When all hell breaks loose, how do you keep moving on your journey? How do you keep going? How do you not give up in the very moment that you kind of do? Yeah.
So when you say a resilience plan, would it be like the worst case scenario, like being prepared for the worst case scenario?
It could be. What I'll typically try to do is, again, if we start with the mind in mind, right? So the brain, if we're starting with the brain, what we want to do is we want to try to keep our brain out of the fear and flight mode. Okay. And the way to do that is to have a reinforceable routine within a resiliency plan that keeps you moving forward when you want to give up. My resiliency plan, for example, includes calling on a handful of specific people to run stuff past them before I make a big decision. Okay.
Got it.
My resiliency plan comes into fact. Okay. I'm going to go into a prayer and meditation state for at least a half an hour to get my anxiety down, get my nerves under control, and then consider my options. My resiliency plan has the built-in thing. I have to consider multiple options before I choose one plan of attack. What most of us do when crap comes at us, we just react to the crap. What we want to do is people to be still for a minute, let the crap come, you assess it, you look at it. What are my options? Now let's do something different. Okay. So that's kind of an overview of a resiliency plan. The next thing that organized plan also needs to have is what's called a replenishment plan, especially with entrepreneurs, people that are going into business and they're developing business and all that kind of stuff, or professional development. You are going to have a lot of stress. You're going to have a lot of grit and days where you have to climb a mountain. You're trying to create something out of nothing. There's innovation. There's creativity that's used. The calories that you use in your brain, right, are getting burned at a very rapid rate. Now, if you do that long enough, you end up having what's called burnout. If you have burnout, now you've gone backwards. And then what you were talking about earlier is you have a lot of people that even in the gym, they'll go to the gym, but then they don't see it through at the very moment it gets hard. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. The very moment the body's about to change is the moment that they pull back. Okay. And it's it could be because of resiliency or burnout. All right. Those are the two primary indicators of that. So what a replenishment plan does is it tells you a couple of key things. First of all, where do you go? What do you do? And who do you do it with? All right. So here's an example of one of my replenishment ideas. I love movies. So when I want to go and get away from business and the world, I will even go to a movie by myself and I will sit and chill. And I might even take a notepad because I learn things from movies, believe it or not, learn human behavior. Right. So I'll do that. So that's one. Another one is I go to the mountains. What do I do is I'm journaling while staring at the mountains. And occasionally I bring my wife will come for that. Okay. So that's an example of a couple different ideas of replenishment. Another replenishment is I'm going to sit down and have coffee with my wife, right? You have to create the thing that's going to give you back the energy that you've just dissipated with the first move, with the first climb. All right. And that's how you avoid burnout, right? Another part of your organizational plan is the relationships. We've already talked about it quite a bit, but you've got to clearly define who's going to be on your mental operating board, who's going to help you make the decisions you need to make. And that's where masterminds come into play. Live events can come into play. Community groups can come into play. Meetup groups can come into play. But all of these are different types of ways specifically designed to you to help you elevate specifically your specific plan. Okay. And then probably my favorite is probably the number 4, the phase 4, which is just work your plan. Work your plan. Now, I would love to go into a big dissertation about what work your plan means. Work your plan just means take the activity, practice it routinely, build consistency, and you will see unstoppable momentum. But you have to believe in your plan. You've got to believe in the people that are teaching you and mentoring you and elevating you and leveling you up. You've got to believe. You cannot get lost in fear. Every time you get lost in fear, you are allowing what you already know to be true. What I want to do is I want to help people understand what they've got to do instead is they've got to claim the thing that they're trying to achieve as if it's already happened. Yeah. Already happened. Because your brain will tie an emotional trigger to that response. And the more your emotional behavior is tied to the thing that you want rather than the thing that you have, the quicker that you will actually have the thing that you want and get away from the thing that you've always had.
Mm-hmm. That's so cool, man. It's so cool. I just took notes and it makes so much sense. And one thing that I wanted to mention that you said at the beginning, clarity leads to consistency and right. So I always say clarity leads to commitment. Commitment leads to consistency. Consistency leads to victory. So that's right. It all starts with clarity on where you are, clarity on where you want to go, clarity on who you must become to get there. And it makes so much sense, man. And this thing that you gotta claim what you want as if you already had it, have it. Yeah. It works. Visualization works because your mind doesn't know the difference between a joke and a fact, right? So the same way in which affirmations and visualization work, the same way negative talk works, right? Yep. Your mind doesn't know whether it's a joke or it's a fact. So if you tell yourself that you're stupid, well, your mind is going to believe it, and then it's going to put you in situations in which you feel stupid. But if you tell yourself that you're successful and that you have everything that you want, well, your mind is going to look for situations to make that true, right? Yep. So that's so cool. And I program myself. I program my mind every single day to help me get what I want, right? Because you're going to get programmed whether you want it or not. How you get programmed is your choice, right? And you do this by getting really clear on what you want and just reaffirming to yourself that this is what you want and that this is going to get. And time again, man, I've always gotten what I want. So like when I was a little kid, I used to say that I was going to marry a blonde woman, right, with blonde hair and like white skin, and like my family used to laugh at me, right? And then I also used to say that I was that when I had kids, my kids were going to be like blonde and blue eyes and and like beautiful and like with white skin. For some reason, I used to say that. Like my family would laugh at me because I was like this, like brown kid,
Yeah.
And it happened. My daughter is blue eyes, blonde hair. My wife is blue eyes, blonde hair, right? So it happened. Another thing that I used to always ask for when I was younger was like to feel part of something, to feel like I belong, to feel like I fit in, right?
Yeah.
And I felt that this past weekend on my mastermind, like I'm part of a group of people who like all want to see you win, like of like actual friends, who are going to the same direction, that are they're into personal growth, they're into like personal development, and I always wanted that, like and everything that I've always wanted and that I've asked for, I'm getting. It just happens for some reason. Like your mind gives it to you. Your mind, right, gives it to you. So yeah, I really like that what you said. And I have my own framework, which is mindset, map, motion, measure, money. Right. So like money is results across every area of your life. And if you want results, there's 4 things that you gotta get right first: your mindset, your map, your motion, your measure, your money. Mindset is about the roadblocks, the limiting beliefs. Map is about clarity. Clarity on where you are, clarity on where you want to go, clarity on who you must become to get there. Motion is about taking action. Measure is about like measuring your progress and like just measuring and tracking, right? And actually, I end every single interview asking a question about those 5 or those 4. So can I go ahead and ask you? We have a couple of minutes, so can I go ahead and ask you the first one?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, man. So for the first one, so if you could give your 21-year-old self some advice, man, what would you say? Like not change anything or not like go back and redo your life now. Just give your 21-year-old self some advice. What would you say?
I would tell my 21-year-old self that your brain reinforces what you tell it. So tell it a different story. Tell it a different story.
So powerful, right? Stories, man.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and the other thing that I think kind of goes along with that is you have to understand that your brain was designed to answer questions on your behalf. So if the questions you are asking are tied to why me, how come this always has to happen, whatever, your brain is going to give you 100 different reasons why that's true. At the same time, if you ask your brain, hey, what can I learn from this experience? How can I use this to develop me and catapult me and launch me? Your brain is going to give you 100 different reasons of how to propel you, which is one of the reasons why the brain is so stinking important. And rather than letting the emotions control the thought, let your thought control the emotion. And I think that's on the mindset side. That's definitely something that I would probably have told my 21-year-old self.
That's cool. That's cool, man. I love it. So for the second question is around mindset, actually. So what's like one mindset shift that you could share that has allowed you to get to where you are right now?
Well, I think we've already talked about the one that I would share that I think everybody needs to be doing, which is tying your actual emotional state directly to the visualization and or the outcome you most desire. I used to think this kind of mindset was kind of hokey in that, no, I got to keep grinding, got to keep grinding, got to keep grinding, got to keep grinding. What I've learned is the more that you strive and grind, the longer it actually takes for these things to manifest in your life. And that actual faith in anything is actually believing that it's already occurred before it's actually occurred, which means now things come to you rather than you have to going after them. You know, we're going to help a major influencer with their book launch using my live events studio in the near future. And I wasn't seeking that. I wasn't seeking that. Like I just wanted to build an amazing venue, and we had our own live events here. And this person told that person told that person, that person told that person. And the next thing you know, this major influencer is like, hey, I got a book launch coming up. Can I use your space? I'm like, let's work out a trade. Right. Those are the kind of examples of being able to be in the moment and let go will become so powerful. And again, it's about letting go of what you know, right? And actually tying an emotional state to what you want most and believing it's already occurred.
That's so awesome, man. And actually, I want to just jump on this as well. So there's like 4 levels of consciousness that I learned a couple of months ago recently. And like the first level of consciousness is the victim mentality. Right? And like people who are trapped in the to me mode, like everything, their mantra is everything happens to me, right? Everything happens to them. And like that's like, it's a very bad level of consciousness to be trapped in. It's very disempowering, and it's like everything's happening to you, right? Like you're living in reaction
creates
mode.
a victim mindset.
So the second level of consciousness, of awareness, is the by me, right? By me mode. So like this is you go from the victim and the to me mode into the achiever mode, and you realize that everything will happen, everything that you want to happen, everything that you want will happen by you. So like you go into the achiever mode. Like this is where most entrepreneurs are in. They're working really hard because everything must happen by them. Like opportunities won't come from the sky. Like they have to go out and make things happen because everything will happen by them. And this is really good, right? Like this is way better to be in than to me, right? Than victim. And like this is what most of the personal development industry focuses on getting people from the victim mentality into the by me mentality, right? Into like the achiever mode. And one of the things that you gotta give up to go from the to me to the by me is blame, right? And like the victim mentality. And one of the things you have to replace that with is personal responsibility. The next level of awareness, the next level of consciousness, is where I feel I'm in, and which is what you're talking about, which is the through me mode, through me, right? Like things happen through you. Things are like in flow, right? Like they're effortless. Like doors open before you even touch the knob, right? And one of the and it's really cool to be here because like if we get an entrepreneur who is in to me mode and we get an entrepreneur who is in through me mode, and they have this let's say sales quota that they have to hit for the month, they both know what they have to be doing every single day to hit there. And like the entrepreneur in to me mode is going to be working really hard, making like 100 calls per hour. And the entrepreneur in through me mode, he'll be doing that as well, but he'll be like more relaxed and more chill. Like he's gonna get there. And he go to Starbucks to get a coffee, he'll be in line, and all of a sudden he's gonna have a conversation with a guy who knows another guy who knows another guy who all of them 3 need their services, and like those 3 sales are whales, and they get him to his sales quota. It happens like effortlessly, right? And that's in through me mode. And one of the things that you gotta give up to get from by me to through me is the need for control, right? Like your attachment to things having to go your way. And one of the things that you have to replace it with, like that need from control, one of the things that you have to replace it with is a sense of knowing. Like just knowing, like if you know what you want, where you're going, if you have a clear like direction, then you just know that you're going to get there, right? Regardless of like the winds of the life, of the river of life, through the process. And that's how I feel right now. And I think that's what you're talking about. I just know where I'm going to end up. And like it feels good. It feels like I'm not forcing anything. I just know.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, absolutely. Now, I mean, you're spot on. And I think as people can grab a hold of that, they'll be able to level up a whole lot quicker.
Yeah. So man, let's do this. So we have a couple of minutes. So the next question, mindset map, clarity. So do you have a tool, a tactic, or a strategy because you talked about clarity, right? That's gaining perspective. Anything that you do, like what could you tell the audience so that they can gain clarity on like what they want, where they're going, who they are, and all that good stuff?
Well, I think it goes back to the gaining perspective phase, right? So first of all, a couple different things. I'll just go through it just for a quick message here. You have to understand how you got to where you are. You've got to get super clear on what it is you really want. And then you have to begin to build a framework on how to get there. All right. So I would say there's 3 great questions in life. Okay. And unless you answer these three great questions in life, you will not be able to live a life of significance and fulfillment. All right. So the number 1 question is who am I? Okay. The second question is why am I here? And the third question is what do I do about it?
Cool.
You see what I'm saying? They're super duper simple questions, but when you start asking yourself these questions to yourself, again, the brain is hardwired to answer the questions that you ask it. So who am I? Well, I'm a talented speaker. I'm a gifted entrepreneur. I'm a great father. I'm a, aspiring man, fantastic husband. Like you start building up your story. Okay. Well, how do I use all of what I know about me to add value to other people? Okay. Well, that's why you're here, right? Once you understand why you're here and the value you bring to other people, okay, well, how am I going to deliver that value to other people? Am I going to start a podcast? Am I going to start a mastermind? Am I going to create a business? Am I going to go to some place that maybe has a bad company culture and I'm going to be the light in the company culture? Am I going to become a dentist or a doctor or that's how you ultimately find your purpose and your significance. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. That's great, man. That's awesome questions that I've taken the time to answer. Mm-hmm. Right. And it works. It works. So the last question, man, is around measure, mindset map, motion, measure. So what's your take on measuring and tracking, whether it's business or life?
Yeah. So a couple different things. So first of all, you're going to set outcomes because you want to have an end goal in mind, right? However, you don't want to tie your emotional well-being to that outcome. Instead, you want to tie your emotional well-being and your mental health to the effort that you're using to apply for that outcome. So, and within my organization and my teams, as a rule of thumb, if I know that someone gave their all to get to a certain destination and they still didn't get there, I will celebrate as if they actually got to the destination.
Nice.
Right? Because the amount of effort that it takes to move the needle determines the amount of space that you're allowed to have in your overall building of self-confidence. The more effort you create, the more self-confidence you will have. The more self-confidence you have, the more consistent you'll be. The more consistent you'll be, the more you'll achieve. It's that simple.
Cool. Awesome, man. Well, man, so we're at the end of the show. Thank you very much for being here, man. Really appreciate it. And I love I love everything that you're all about, man. I really resonated with your grow framework and with your framework for life mastery. So I bet that other people listening are going to resonate with that as well. So if they want to know more about you, like where can they go? Where can they find more about you?
I mean, I'd love to stay connected with the audience for sure. I'm all over YouTube and, Stuck to Unstoppable is obviously on every podcast player, but we also host it on YouTube, much like you do. And I think Scoggins.com. And if you want to find me on Instagram, I'm most active there, although we're going to launch the TikTok station here very, very soon. And I'm at Steven_Scoggins. And that's with a PH. So STEPHEN_Scoggins. I do lives there every now and again. We do all kinds of reels and just content that we think adds value to inspire you to keep fighting and moving forward and to do what you need to do, which is take a chance on yourself and make an impact in living a meaningful life.
Awesome. So for everyone listening, make sure to go and follow Steven and Scoggins on all his social media and stuff. We're going to put all your links, man, under the description of wherever this appears, and make sure to go and follow him. Also, make sure to subscribe to this podcast if you haven't, so that you can get notified when we drop another life-changing episode. And Steven, just for the audience, man, like a podcast has changed my life, and there's gonna be a special link just for the Steven Scoggins episode under the description of this video. To give anyone who may want to start a podcast a free training from like beginning to end on how to start, grow, monetize, and like automate I call it a multi-million-dollar network building podcast. So there's going to be a free training just for this episode that we're going to give to anyone listening who is interested in changing their life as well, just like I've been able to do for this episode only. So man, thank you very much for being here, and I really appreciate you. And it was great talking to you.
Sincerely my pleasure, man. I can't wait to see you again.
See you soon.
All right, peace.
Thank you for watching the Gentleman's Success, Happiness, and Fulfillment Talk podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with one friend, leave us a comment, and let us know. 99% of people never leave a review or comment, but we love and are very thankful with the 1% of you who do. If there's something or someone you want to see on this podcast, send me a message on Instagram at Alex_Ramirez 1020 and let me know. As a thank you for that, I have an amazing surprise for each and every one of you who does take the time to leave us a comment or review on YouTube or one of the major podcasting platforms